In this video, we're checking out the latest game-changing update to Automobilista 2, and specifically how the rental karts go to explain the handling and physics that you have in Automobilista 2. I was genuinely blown away by the degree to which these rental karts really help explain the nature of Automobilista 2. So, without further ado, remember, to have the power to unsubscribe when I say something that upsets you, you have to first be a subscriber. So subscribe so you can unsubscribe, and preemptively click the like button twice or click the dislike button. It doesn't matter, just click stuff or don't, who cares? As always, it's been another monumentally game-changing update, which means that Automobilista 2 effectively plays exactly the same as it did before. Though, in fairness, there is more polish to things and there are tweaks and changes, namely tyre tread adjustments, go-kart adjustments, LMDH, GP2, LMP1, P1, Formula Ultimate Gen 2. There's a whole bunch of patch stuff, there's a whole bunch of adjusted AI stuff. You know, Reiza do keep working on things, and this title gets more polish than a vintage car at a car show. So fair play to Reiza. I do give them stick, but you have to congratulate developers that actually do keep working on things. The interesting part of this, though, is the go-karts, and I spent some time driving the rental karts, and I have to say, they are really fun to race, and I think you can have some really fun racing if you do local racing or quick multiplayer racing with people. In this case, we're doing racing with AI. The AI is a little bit janky at times. They're a lot better if you qualify first and then let them spread out. I wouldn't say they're the best at all times, especially on some of these indoor tracks. As you can see, they tend to get bunched up a bit. But generally, it's actually a really fun experience. Also, these go-karts will be absolutely awesome in VR. The sense of speed you get from VR, your awareness, it just makes sense. So if you've got a VR headset and you want to have some fun, jump onto any of these go-karts and I'll defy you to not have a fun time. But what's really interesting was the nature in which the go-karts really highlight how Automobilista 2 drives. And also, specifically, how these low-powered rental karts highlight AMS2 tyre model and physics. Go-karts are super basic vehicles, super raw, and as a result, all you can really experience is the tyre model. It's not quite that simple, but it really gets you to the essence of a physics engine. I recommend this with any game. Play like mod go-karts in the original Assetto Corsa, or go-karts in AMS1 or other titles, the R-Factor 2 go-karts, and you'll see having everything removed lets you just really feel the innate underlying physics of a sim. And what these go-karts highlight with Automobilista 2 is exactly what's wrong with the full-size vehicles, and why it feels a bit weird to drive if you're used to more realistic simulators such as AC1, LMU, even the original Automobilista that has much more realistic handling. So what you notice with this is that, first of all, at low speed, the go-kart is mega unhinged compared to any real-world go-kart that's more predictable, planted and stable. You'll notice that the go-kart also has a lot of like initial float to it, and it doesn't have that initial bite that real-world rental karts have. Like, the tyres just want to always be in some kind of pretty large slide. Then you'll find when you go through a corner and get into a decent slide through a corner, it will continue in that slide for ages and also be massively unhinged and rotaty when you start using the steering wheel in those slides. Again, in a real go-kart, rental kart, they tend to just be really stable and kind of lumbering and tend to go in a predictable single direction. The braking behaviour, quite good in AMS2. Rear brakes, if you brake too hard, it will insta-rotate, which is actually quite funny because obviously a real kart does that, but that's also like an inherent behaviour to just about everything in AMS2 when you start locking up. So I wouldn't say that's actually too bad, but you still have to be like really weirdly careful compared to a real go-kart where you can drive rental karts like an absolute idiot. and really get away with it, whereas in MS2 they're actually quite finicky and a bit unhinged. I would say though, as long as you like tone things down a bit and you're careful, the go-kart handling is really good fun and still more than compelling enough to actually get a good go-kart experience. And in some ways, the actual drive of these go-karts does really embody the sort of approach of these karts in real life in its own sort of quirky AMS2 way, but it's quite nice how you can feel what's going on. The force feedback, we're using a rack force, custom force feedback. You can feel what the kart's doing. There's good force feedback detail and stuff. So, so I actually think it's really quite good, but it's just so interesting how the weirdness of the rental karts is exactly the weirdness of the full-size cars. Like, the stuff that's wrong in the rental karts is exactly what's wrong with the full-size cars, and especially what you notice is wrong and a bit weird when you compare AMS2 to AMS1 or the original Assetto Corsa or really good cars in R-Factor 2 and other simulators that just have much more realistic basic tyre behaviour. So I thought it was absolutely fascinating how it explains basically the behaviour, and you guys can go and drive a rental kart yourself and really compare it, so it really helps you understand what's going on with the simulator. And of course you don't just have the rental karts, we also have the shifter karts and the faster go-karts. I don't really think these are anything how these would be like in real life, to be honest, but they were crazy and fun to drive, again completely unhinged and weirdly floaty all over the track like the full-size cars, but I think in and of itself really fun and really nice go-kart tracks in Automobilista 2, like a really good selection that you get in the game, which is absolutely fantastic. So generally though, ultimately Automobilista 2, game-changing update obviously, but it is still Automobilista 2, and right, I don't think Reiza can get any more out of this physics engine. I think Reiza, for sure, they should have people working over on this game still. If it's making money, getting sales, why not keep doing stuff to it? Great. But it's clear that Reiza cannot get any more out of this, and it's also clear that this still, though they've managed to make it a lot more balanced and a lot less mental, it basically just drives exactly like a polished version of Project Cars 2. There were some cars in Project Cars 2 that are actually pretty close to what we have here. It's just that basically all the cars in AMS 2 now are as if they were very, very polished Project Cars 2 cars. They have done a lot of changes and tweaks, and there's a lot more polish, the game's a lot more stable, so I'm not saying it's just Project Cars 2, but the underlying core mechanic and nature is still that Project Cars 2 thing. Like, you can't get away from it. So I mean, you can also say the same thing in many ways about Automobilista 1. Still had like that core G-motor stuff in it, but with a lot of polish. But yeah, I just feel like this is great. If you like Automobilista 2, you like VR, you like the features, I'm not saying it's bad. As a thing in and of itself, it's really great. But it doesn't come close to the raw driving in Automobilista 1 or R-Factor 2 or the original Assetto Corsa. Like, the physics just aren't there. Like, it might be more complex, it might have more features. 2 wheels! But it's just, I don't see what, unless they could absolutely drastically change things. I actually think now we're basically at a time where Reiza needs to move to another engine. I feel like they're clearly really talented. They know what they're doing. You can see this with all the stuff they've done. But they've the limits have been reached in AMS2 and have for a long time. So I think it's time for Reiza to move on to something else, to be honest. Skeleton team on this, and then maybe start, I mean, they can't, R-Factor 2 maybe, engine, I don't know. Do you know what I would really love to see is if someone like Reiza could license the original Assetto Corsa and make a solid title out of something like that. But we'll follow the next game-changing update. You can have a lot of fun with this. As I say, credit where credit's due. They do polish, they do keep working. You will have good fun with this. But that is basically it for Automobilista 2. Played it for a few hours, and I'm just like, well, for me personally, I would rather just drive Assetto Corsa because it's actually realistic, whereas Automobilista 2, not particularly. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed unsubscribing if you're an AMS2 fanboy. But until the next one, happy tea drinking, take care, and goodbye.